6 toxic habits that can make people lose respect for you. These aren't just harmless quirks. They are behaviors that can seriously undermine your reputation and damage your relationships. You might be thinking, come on, everyone has bad habits, and you are right. But the habits we are discussing today are particularly harmful because they hit at the core of how we associate with others. I have lived long enough and observed quite enough to understand that respect is not something you demand. It is something you command through your actions, character, and discipline. Many people walk through life wondering why they are treated with disregard, yet they fail to see how their own habits invite this treatment. Today, I will share with you 6 habits that can lead people to disrespect you, not because the world is cruel, but because these habits weaken your presence, your integrity, and your influence. Now, let's get started. Habit number 1. Speaking more than you listen. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Nature has given man one tongue but 2 ears, that we may hear twice as much as we speak." This is not merely a reflection on biology, but a deep insight into human wisdom. Speech, when used recklessly, diminishes its own power, but silence, when used wisely, strengthens it. In life, those who dominate conversations with their own thoughts, experiences, and opinions often believe they are asserting their importance. Yet, paradoxically, the more they speak without substance, the less they are valued. People are drawn to those who listen, who absorb, who weigh their words before they utter them. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reminded himself to speak only when necessary, and even then, only with truth and purpose. He understood that a man who speaks less but with depth commands far more respect than one who talks incessantly without meaning. Moreover, talking too much often stems from arrogance or insecurity, either a belief that one's own words are more valuable than others, or a desperate need to be noticed. Both are weaknesses, not strengths. The Stoics taught that virtue lies in temperance, the ability to restrain one's impulses. Just as a disciplined man does not overindulge in food or drink, he does not overindulge in speech. A wise man listens not just to respond, but to understand. He does not interrupt, for he knows that true knowledge is gained through patience, not haste. He does not dismiss opposing views, for he recognizes that every conversation is an opportunity to grow. And when he does speak, his words carry weight, because they are rare, deliberate, and filled with meaning. The one who listens commands more respect than the one who speaks without measure. And in that silence, he finds wisdom, control, and power. 2. Gossiping. Imagine this. You are in a room full of people, sharing laughter, exchanging stories, and then, in a quiet moment, someone leans in and whispers, "Did you hear what happened to him?" The words slither into the air, and suddenly the tone changes. That whisper carries a hidden poison gossip. Gossiping is a habit that weakens a man's character. It turns trust into suspicion, respect into mockery, and friendships into shallow performances. When you speak about others behind their backs, you're not only harming them, you're exposing your own weakness. A man who gossips is a man who cannot be trusted. He may think he is entertaining, that he is gaining favor, but in reality, he is digging his own grave. I once knew a man, let's call him Darius. He was charming, quick-witted, and always had a story to tell about someone else. At first, people enjoyed his company. He had a way of making every conversation feel exciting. But over time, something strange happened. People started to avoid sharing anything personal around him. They laughed at his jokes, but with caution in their eyes. They realized that if Darius spoke about others so freely, then he would surely do the same to them when they weren't around. One day he shared a private detail about a friend in an attempt to impress a new group of people. It was something that should have never been repeated. The next day, the person he had betrayed found out. The confrontation was sharp, and the damage was irreparable. Word spread, and soon, even those who once enjoyed Darius's stories distanced themselves from him. In the end, Darius lost more than friends. He lost respect. And once respect is lost, it is nearly impossible to regain. A man without respect is a man without strength in the eyes of others. His words become empty, his presence tolerated rather than welcomed. If you wish to be respected, do not engage in idle talk about others. Let your words be few and your actions strong. A man who speaks little but carries himself with wisdom and discipline will always command more honor than a man who speaks too much and loses his dignity in the process. Let others waste their breath on gossip. You stay silent, stay noble, and let your character speak louder than any words ever could. 3. Neglecting your word. I have learned in life that a man is only as good as his word. Once, I trusted someone who made grand promises, assurances of loyalty, commitments to projects, pledges of support, and yet, time after time, their words turned to dust. At first, I gave them the benefit of the doubt, but as the pattern repeated, I understood the truth. Their words carried no weight. And when a man's words lose value, so does his presence in the eyes of others. In Rome, a man's word was his bond. There were no lengthy contracts, no excessive formalities. His reputation depended on his ability to do what he said he would do. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned against making promises we cannot keep, for to do so is to invite disgrace. A promise, he said, is the most necessary of bonds in human society. If you give your word, you must either fulfill it or not offer it in the first place. When you break a promise, when you fail to follow through, when you allow excuses to take the place of action, you are teaching the world that you are unreliable. And what happens to the unreliable man? He is overlooked, dismissed, and ultimately disrespected, not because people are cruel, but because they can no longer afford to depend on him. Trust, once broken, is a shattered mirror. You may try to piece it back together, but the cracks will always remain. A Stoic does not speak idly. He does not promise lightly. He commits only when he knows he can act, and when he does commit, he follows through, regardless of difficulty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to align his actions with his principles. He knew that virtue is not in words, but in deeds. I have learned this the hard way. I have seen men with great potential fall into obscurity because they failed to honor their word. And I have seen quiet, disciplined men rise to power simply because they could be trusted. The choice is yours. Be a person whose word is respected, or be one whose words mean nothing. 4. Seeking approval constantly. I have seen men betray themselves just to hear the applause of others. I have watched people shape their words, their actions, even their very beliefs, according to what they think will be most admired. And I have learned this: the more you seek approval, the less you are respected. A man who chases validation is like a ship without a rudder. He goes wherever the current of opinion pulls him, never truly in control, never standing firm. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned against this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the moment you stop trying to please everyone, you begin to live according to your own principles. And a man of principle. whether praised or criticized, remains unmoved. I remember a time when I hesitated to speak my mind, fearing that others would disapprove. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be accepted. But in my eagerness to win their favor, I lost something greater, my own self-respect. I was bending, shifting, making myself small just to fit into spaces I had outgrown. And then I realized, those who demand you change for their approval will never truly respect you. They will test you, manipulate you, and push you further from yourself, because they see that your greatest fear is rejection. A Stoic does not live for applause. He does not shape himself to fit the expectations of the crowd. He stands firm in what he knows to be right, guided by virtue, not by fleeting opinions. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic leaders, ruled an empire yet did not seek praise. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." What madness is this? To live for the approval of others is to live as a slave to their judgments. I have learned that true respect comes not from seeking approval, but from being unwavering in your values. Let people think what they will. Let them gossip, criticize, or misunderstand. If you act with integrity, their opinions have no power over you. And when they see that you do not bend, that you do not seek their validation, they will come to respect you, not because you chased their approval, but because you never needed it in the first place. 5. Complaining and blaming others. There was a time in my life when I found myself blaming everything and everyone for my struggles. If I failed, it was because the odds were stacked against me. If I was treated unfairly, it was because the world was cruel. I carried my grievances like a shield, thinking they justified my inaction. But then I learned a hard truth. Complaining changes nothing, and blaming others only weakens you. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius, a man who faced betrayals, wars, and plagues, did not waste his breath on complaints. Instead, he reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Life will never be fair. It does not adjust itself to our desires. But the question is not whether life is fair. The question is, what will you do about it? I remember a man I once knew who had every reason to complain. He grew up in hardship, faced rejection at every turn, and had little support. Yet, he never wasted a moment on self-pity. While others made excuses, he took action. While others blamed their circumstances, he adapted. And because of that, he earned the respect of everyone around him. Not because life was easy for him, but because he refused to let it break him. On the other hand, I have also known men who constantly complained, who pointed fingers at everyone but themselves. And do you know what happens to such men? People stop listening. People stop respecting them. They are seen as weak, not because they lacked fortune, but because they lacked resilience. A Stoic does not dwell on what he cannot change. He does not curse the rain. He finds a way to walk through it. He does not waste time blaming others. He focuses on what he can do next. "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters," said Epictetus. And I have found this to be true. If you want respect, stop complaining, stop blaming, stand up, take responsibility, and act. Not because the world will suddenly become fair, but because you will become stronger. And strength, not complaints, is what earns the respect of others. 6. Being dishonest or manipulative. A dishonest man believes he is gaining an advantage, but he is, in fact, setting the stage for his own downfall. He may think his lies are clever, his manipulations unseen, but truth has a way of revealing itself. When it does, the damage is often irreversible. The Stoics understood that integrity is the foundation of a life well lived. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to remain upright, not kept upright by others, but by his own nature. A man who lies, deceives, or manipulates is not only betraying those around him, he is betraying himself. Every falsehood weakens his character, and every act of manipulation erodes his own sense of honor. What is gained through deception is never truly gained. It is merely borrowed, and the cost of repayment is always greater than the initial reward. People may tolerate many flaws, but they do not forgive dishonesty. A single lie can undo years of trust. A single act of manipulation can mark a man as unworthy of respect. Once a person's word is doubted, everything they say becomes suspect. And without trust, a man is nothing. Seneca warned against deception, for it is a form of self-inflicted harm. The liar must constantly weave new lies to cover the old, living in a web of his own making, always fearful of exposure. He may achieve some success, but it will never bring him peace. The Stoic, however, values truth above comfort. He does not twist words for personal gain, nor does he betray others for temporary advantage. He understands that true strength lies in speaking with honesty, even when the truth is difficult to bear. To be respected, one must be trustworthy. To be trustworthy, one must be honest. A man who upholds his integrity, who chooses honor over easy gain, will find that respect follows naturally. He does not need to manipulate others to rise. His character alone will elevate him. My friends, the world may not always reward virtue immediately, but over time, your habits will shape how you are treated. A man who listens, keeps his word, stands firm in his beliefs, controls his emotions, takes responsibility, speaks truthfully, and constantly improves himself will be respected, not just by others, but by himself. And that, above all, is what matters most.